The president made an important announcement on social media. This happened on July 12, 2025. He said that the United States will add a new tax. This tax is 30%. It is on all goods that come into the U.S. from Mexico and the European Union. This new tax will start on August 1, 2025. The president posted letters on social media for the leaders of Mexico and the European Union. He said the tax is needed because of things like illegal drugs and trade problems. He said that Mexico has helped, but not enough. This 30% tax is new. It is on top of other taxes that already exist. For example, there are already taxes on things like steel and cars. This new 30% tax is separate. It will apply to many different products from Mexico and the European Union. Countries that send goods to the U.S. will have to pay this tax, or the companies in the U.S. that buy these goods. Experts say this tax will likely make many products more expensive for people in the United States. This could affect prices in stores for many things people buy every day. The announcement caused tension right away. Mexico and the countries in the European Union were surprised and worried. They said they want to talk to the U.S. but are also ready to protect themselves. This decision affects a very large amount of trade. Together, Mexico and the European Union sell many goods to the United States every year. This new tax could change a lot about how countries trade with each other. The date, August 1st, is now very important. People are watching to see what happens before that date. The future of trade for the U.S., Mexico, and Europe is uncertain because of this big change. 2. The big news. The big news came in official letters. These letters were sent by the president to Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, and to leaders in the European Union. The letters shared more specific information about the new 30% tax on goods coming into the United States from these places. In the letters, the president gave his reasons for the new tax. He said it is needed for national security and to fix problems in trade balances. In his letter to Mexico, he wrote that Mexico has helped to make the border safer, but he believes they must do more. He talked about the issue of illegal drugs coming into the U.S. from Mexico. In his letter to EU leaders, he stated that Europe's trade rules create a large trade difference with the U.S. The letters also included a strong warning. If Mexico or the EU put their own new taxes on goods from the U.S., the U.S. would put even more taxes on their goods. This extra tax would be added to the first 30% rate. This makes it clear that the U.S. is ready to increase costs even higher if these countries respond by adding their own taxes. It is important to know that this 30% tax is not the only tax on imported goods. Some products already have taxes, for example, on steel or cars. The new 30% tax is on top of these old taxes. So, some products could have two taxes, or even more. making them much more expensive in American stores. This new tax plan affects a very large amount of international trade. Together, Mexico and the European Union sell many things to the United States. In fact, goods from Mexico and the EU are about 1/3 of all the things the U.S. buys from other countries every year. Last year, the U.S. bought goods from Mexico worth about $505 billion. From the EU, the U.S. bought goods worth about $605 billion. Mexico is a very important trade partner for the U.S., sending over 80% of all the goods it sells to the United States. Under current trade rules, like the USMCA agreement, many goods from Mexico have had no tax at all. But this new plan could add a 30% tax to many of these products. This shows the big change and how many products from food to cars could be affected. It is a very big tax on a very large part of the world's trade. 3. What is a tariff? What is a tariff? It is a kind of tax. A tariff is a tax on goods that come into a country from another country. For example, if a company in the United States buys something from a country in Europe or Mexico, the U.S. government can put an extra tax on that thing when it arrives. This tax is called a tariff. How do tariffs work? When goods arrive in the United States from another country, the American company that imports them must pay this extra tax to the U.S. government at the border. This makes the imported goods more expensive for the American company. It adds a cost to the product before it even goes to a store or a factory. Who pays for this tax? It is not just the American company buying the goods from abroad. Experts who study money say that the total cost of tariffs is usually shared among different groups involved in the trade. Part of the cost is often paid by the company in the other country that sells the goods. They might lower their own price to help. Part is paid by the American company that imports them. They might earn less profit. And often, a large part of the cost is passed on to people who buy the goods in American stores. So the final buyer in the U.S. ends up paying more for the product than before the tariff. This means that if there is a big tariff, like a 30% tax on many imported goods, it will likely make many things you buy in American stores more expensive. The cost of everyday products, from food to items in shops, could go up significantly. This happens because the companies selling the goods in the U.S. need to cover the extra tax they paid to the government. Small businesses that sell these goods or use parts from other countries in their own products are also very worried. They fear that the sudden extra costs from a big tariff will hurt their business and make things very uncertain. Higher prices on common goods can especially affect families across the country. In short, a big tariff means higher prices for many products for people living in the United States. 4. Why is Trump doing this? Many people are asking why the president is choosing to put these big taxes on goods from Mexico and Europe. The president has given his reasons. He says one big reason is national security. He also talks a lot about illegal drugs coming into the United States. In his letter to the President of Mexico, he wrote that the tariff is directly about fighting the fentanyl crisis. Fentanyl is a very dangerous drug. He said that Mexico needs to do more to stop bad groups who bring drugs into the country. He thinks the tariffs will help stop this. For Europe, his reason is different. In his letter to the leaders of Europe, he said the tariffs are to fix the trade balance. This means the money that goes between the U.S. and Europe. He thinks Europe sells much more to the U.S. than the U.S. sells to Europe. He wants this trade to be more equal. He also wants American products to be able to sell more easily in European countries without their own high taxes. The president also warned both Mexico and Europe. He said that if they add their own taxes on goods from the U.S. will add even more tax on their goods. He said the U.S. will add the same amount or even more. Some people who study the economy and how countries work together have another idea. These experts, like economists and analysts, suggest that the tariffs might be a way to make pressure for talking. They think it could be a strong way to start important talks with Mexico and Europe. They see it as a high-pressure strategy. The president makes a very big demand first. Then he hopes the other countries will agree to a deal to avoid the big tax. This is sometimes called a negotiating tactic. It means using a big threat to get a better agreement. 5. Mexico's big problem. Mexico heard the news about the new tax. Officials in Mexico immediately said the plan was not fair. They said they would talk with the United States government quickly to find a solution. Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, spoke calmly about the news. She said it was important to stay cool-headed when facing any problem. She said that Mexico and the United States could find better terms through talking. President Sheinbaum also talked about what Mexico already does to help the United States. She said Mexico helps a lot with border security. Mexico has sent thousands of soldiers to the border. Mexico has also arrested members of drug groups. She said this shows Mexico is already working with the United States on important security issues. But President Sheinbaum also said Mexico has important things that cannot change in talks. This is about Mexico's independence and its own laws. However, the new tax plan creates a big problem for Mexico's economy. Mexico sells many things to the United States. More than 80% of everything Mexico sends to other countries goes north to the United States. This makes the United States Mexico's biggest customer by far. This means Mexico's economy depends a lot on this trade. A 30% tax makes things from Mexico much more expensive for people and companies in the United States. This could hurt businesses in Mexico greatly. Products like avocados, many types of vegetables, and auto parts could cost much more. This would make things more expensive for people in the United States, too, affecting everyday life. It could also hurt U.S. companies that use parts from Mexico to build their products, like cars. Mexican officials said they knew the United States planned to send a letter about the new tax before it was announced publicly. They said they told the United States during a meeting the day before that they did not agree with the plan at all. They called it unfair treatment for Mexico. Now, high-level Mexican officials are talking with people from the United States government in Washington. The head negotiator for Mexico, Alicia Bárcena, said that Mexico is ready to continue working together on security, migration, and trade issues. But she also said Mexico expects a fair solution from the talks, one that respects Mexico's rights. Mexico's negotiators sound hopeful about the discussions. They said they feel sure that they can stop the full 30% tax from happening. One official said talks have already started to avert the worst, meaning to avoid the biggest problems for Mexico's trade. Mexico has a trade agreement with the United States and Canada called the USMCA. Many goods trade with no tax under this agreement. The new 30% tax might target goods not covered by this old agreement, which already had some taxes. But this new high tax rate is still a very big worry. Mexico hopes to remain free from these high taxes, especially since it has cooperated on security. The future of trade between the two countries depends on these important talks. Happening now. Mexico wants a deal that is good for its country and protects its economy from this big problem. 6. Europe is not happy. The news about the new 30% tax on goods from Europe came as a big surprise and caused much worry there. Leaders of the European Union quickly reacted. They said this large tax would be very bad. It would hurt companies in Europe that sell products to the United States. It would also hurt American companies that buy things from Europe. And it would make many goods more expensive for people in both places, affecting things like food, cars, and even some important supplies for health. Europe's leaders stated they want to talk with the United States to find a way out of this problem. However, they also made it clear they are ready to protect Europe's interests. The European Union has a specific law designed for situations like this. It's called the Anti-Coercion Law, and it allows Europe to respond with its own actions if it feels unfairly pushed by another country through trade taxes. They are ready to use this law if the situation does not improve. This announcement was especially surprising because the United States and Europe were already working on a new trade agreement. These talks were going well, and many people believed a deal was almost finished. The sudden news about the 30% tax on almost everything coming from Europe stopped these hopeful talks and created high tension. Leaders from different European countries held an emergency meeting to discuss the news. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said Europe should stay calm and keep talking, but must be ready to defend itself. The President of France, Emmanuel Macron, urged Europe to prepare strong actions to respond, even while continuing negotiations. Other leaders, like the Prime Ministers of Italy and Ireland, also stressed the need for talks to reach a fair solution for everyone. European officials and business leaders believe that adding such high taxes on goods hurts economies. They said tariffs are like taxes that make prices go up, which can cause inflation. This makes it harder for businesses to plan and grow. It also makes life more expensive for regular people. Companies in Europe, especially big ones that sell a lot to the U.S. or work with U.S. and Mexican companies in supply chains, said they have already faced problems from past U.S. trade taxes. New taxes at 30% would make their problems much worse. So the European Union plans to negotiate very seriously before the August 1 date. They hope they can find an agreement to stop the 30% tax from starting. But they are also making plans to put their own matching taxes on goods coming from the United States if their talks do not succeed. Some people who work closely with European leaders think the U.S. leader is just saying this high tax will happen to get Europe to agree to more things in the trade talks. They hope this is just a tactic to get leverage and that a big trade conflict can be avoided through more talking before the deadline. 7. Higher prices for everyone. The new tax on goods from Mexico and the European Union will affect many people. First, businesses in the United States that buy things from these places must pay more. They must pay an extra 30% tax. This is a very big cost increase for them. These businesses will likely put their costs onto the prices of the things they sell. This means many products in stores will cost more money for people in the U.S. to buy. For example, food like avocados and different vegetables that come from Mexico could become more expensive. Cars and car parts that are made in or come through Mexico and Europe might also cost more. So shoppers buying these things will see higher prices at the store. It will cost more money for families to buy the things they need or want. Some people say this new tax is like an extra tax on families. Small businesses are also worried. They fear these sudden high costs and not knowing how prices will change. It makes it hard for them to plan their business and make money. Sudden changes in taxes can hurt them a lot because they do not have a lot of extra money. The financial markets, where people buy and sell parts of companies, reacted to the news. Stock market prices in the U.S. went down at first. The money from Europe, the euro, and the money from Mexico, the peso, also went down a little. This shows that people in the money world were worried about the effect of the new tax. The money from this new tax goes to the U.S. government. Some people think this is good because the government gets more money. But others, like one senator named Amy Klobuchar, say it makes things much more expensive for normal families. They think it will slow down the economy because people will have less money to spend on other things. The effect of the new tax is higher prices for many things people buy every day. 8. What happens next? The date, August 1st, is coming very soon. This is the day when the U.S. government plans to start a big new tax, a 30% tariff. This tax will be on most goods that come into the United States from Mexico and countries in the European Union. It is a very important moment for trade and the economy. Many people around the world are watching closely to see what will happen next. Right now, important talks are happening in Washington, D.C. These talks have high stakes, meaning the result is very important and will affect many people and companies. Officials from Mexico are in Washington talking with the United States government. Leaders and trade officials from the European Union are also having meetings with the U.S. government. Their main goal is to find an agreement, a way to stop this high tax from starting. Everyone hopes for a last-minute compromise. A compromise is when both sides agree to change their position a little to find a solution. The United States has asked Mexico to do more, like help stop illegal drugs coming across the border into the U.S. The U.S. also wants the European Union to change some of its rules for trade. If Mexico and the EU can agree to some things the U.S. wants, maybe the U.S. government will decide not to put the 30% tax on their products. But there is a big risk if these talks do not go well. If no agreement is found by the deadline of August 1st, the high 30% tax will start automatically. This could cause a major trade crisis. When big countries put very high taxes on each other's goods, it makes buying and selling things very difficult and expensive for companies. This higher cost will likely be passed on to the people who buy the products, making many things more expensive in stores. The situation feels very tense and uncertain. Businesses that buy goods from Mexico and the EU are worried. People who buy these goods are worried about higher prices. Many experts say that if these talks fail and the tax starts, it could hurt the economy not just in the United States, Mexico, and Europe, but around the whole world. It could become a global economic confrontation, which means serious trade problems between major countries that could slow down the world economy. In the next few weeks, leaders must find a solution. The future of trade between these important partners is not clear right now. Will the talks succeed and stop the tax? Or will the big tariff start on August 1st and cause big problems for trade and economies everywhere? What do you think will happen? Will the United States, Mexico, and the European Union find a compromise before the deadline and stop the tariff?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.